The night sky looked calm over Earth, but far beyond the reach of human eyes something stirred. At the edge of the solar system, hidden behind the orbit of Neptune, space rippled with the arrival of a fleet unlike anything humanity had ever seen. The Dravari had come. They were conquerors, a species that had marched from star to star for centuries. Their empire stretched across dozens of systems. To them, Earth was nothing more than another small blue world, a prize to be taken. Their ships were massive, shaped like jagged spears of metal, each one longer than the tallest mountains on Earth. Inside them, thousands of soldiers and machines waited for the command to strike. The Dravari leaders gathered in their flagship, a towering vessel called the Iron Spear. At its heart sat Commander Voron, a being who had led dozens of invasions. His eyes glowed with pride as he studied the holographic display. The solar system lay before him like prey, the planets lined up like beads on a string. "This system is quiet," one of his officers said. "There is no sign of defense. Earth will be ours within weeks." Voron allowed himself a thin smile. He had studied Earth from afar. Their people still fought among themselves, divided by borders and politics. Their weapons were small, primitive compared to the firepower of the Dravari fleet. This would be simple, he thought. Another easy conquest to feed the empire. But what Voron did not know was that humanity had been watching. Years earlier, strange signals had been picked up by deep space observatories on Earth. At first, scientists thought it was nothing but static. But hidden in the noise were patterns, pulses that did not belong to nature. Astronomers worked quietly, passing their findings to military leaders. The truth soon became clear. Something was moving among the stars. Something was watching Earth. From that day, humanity began to prepare. Satellites were repurposed. Space stations were armed. Mars, once a frontier for exploration, was quietly reshaped into a fortress. Hidden rail cannons were built beneath its surface, ready to fire. Solar arrays were expanded to power energy weapons. Swarms of drones were stored in underground bunkers, waiting for the day they would be released. The people of Earth lived their lives unaware of the threat, but above them, scientists and soldiers worked together like never before. Nations that once distrusted each other now shared secrets, united by one fear. They knew an enemy was coming. Now that enemy had arrived. As the Dravari fleet moved past Neptune, they slowed to study the planets ahead. Their ships scanned the gas giants, sending back streams of data. They noted the storms of Jupiter, the frozen deserts of Pluto, the pale rocks drifting in the asteroid belt. None of it concerned them. Their attention was fixed on Earth. "Primitive world," another officer muttered as the blue and green sphere appeared on the display. "Their defenses will crumble in days." Voron nodded. He had heard the same words many times before on other campaigns. Always the locals thought themselves strong, but always they fell. Earth would be no different. Still, he felt a small ripple of caution. Something about the system seemed too quiet. The planets showed no cities, no weapons. Even Mars, which he expected to have colonies, appeared empty. It was only a world of red dust. "Strange," he said softly, "but it matters little. Once we pass Mars, the planet Earth will be within range. Then we begin." The officers bowed. The order was set. The Dravari fleet adjusted course and moved toward Mars. But unseen by their eyes, hidden systems activated across the red planet. Deep beneath the soil, generators hummed to life. Cold rail cannons shifted, their barrels pointing toward the stars. Automated defenses locked onto incoming targets. Satellites hidden in the shadow of the planet lit up, sending silent signals to Earth. In secret control rooms on Earth, human commanders leaned over glowing maps. They watched the fleet draw closer, each alien ship marked in red. There was no panic. No surprise. They had been waiting for this moment. One commander, an older man named Harris, whispered to his staff, "They finally came." In a laboratory far away, a scientist named Lena stared at the same screen. Her heart pounded. She had helped design the drones now buried under Martian soil. She had spent years hoping they would never need to be used. Now she understood that the time had come. The Dravari believed humanity was weak. They believed Earth was unprepared. But the truth was different. Humanity had studied their signals, their patterns, their technology. Humanity had learned. As the alien fleet glided silently toward Mars, Earth itself held its breath. The first invasion fleet ever to reach the solar system did not know what awaited them. And humanity, for the first time in history, stood united under one thought: the Dravari must not pass Mars. For many years, Earth had lived under a quiet shadow. Few knew about it, but the Watchers did. These were not only soldiers but also scientists, engineers, and thinkers from every nation. They worked in silence, bound by one secret: humanity was not alone, and something dangerous was approaching. At first, only a small group believed the signals from space were real. A handful of astronomers caught the strange rhythms in the static. When they presented the discovery, many dismissed it. But then came the second wave of signals, stronger, clearer, more complex. That was when governments took notice. A council was formed. Nations that argued for decades over land and politics now shared one room. They knew Earth had little time to prepare. The council decided the best chance for survival was not on Earth itself but further away. Mars would be the shield. The red planet had no great cities, no crowds, no noise. That made it perfect. Supplies were shipped quietly, often under the disguise of research missions. Machines dug deep into the soil, carving out bunkers where rail cannons and missile silos could hide. Vast solar arrays were stretched across the surface, their panels disguised to look like ordinary exploration fields. Above Mars, a web of satellites was placed in orbit. Some looked like normal weather sensors, others like communication relays. But hidden inside them were powerful lenses and laser arrays, ready to strike. The Watchers had turned Mars into something far more than a place of study. They had turned it into a fortress. Back on Earth, people lived as usual. They did not know that teams of experts met every week in secret rooms beneath mountains and oceans. They did not know that engineers were designing drones that could fly in space without fuel for months, guided by artificial minds. Only the Watchers knew. And the Watchers carried the weight of silence, for they could not tell the world what was coming. One of them was Lena, the scientist who had given most of her life to building the swarm of drones. She remembered when she first saw the strange patterns from deep space. She had stayed up all night at her desk, listening to the faint pulsing signals. Something about them was not random. They carried order, a language. That was the moment she understood that humanity was no longer hidden. Someone had found Earth. On the military side, Commander Harris carried the same burden. He had fought battles on Earth, but none of them compared to this. He knew the enemy would not be a rival nation but a power from another star. His duty was to make sure humanity would not fall. Every night he studied maps of the solar system, planning where defenses should be placed. Every morning he trained teams of operators who would control the hidden weapons. Years passed this way. The Watchers waited. They improved their systems, learning to jam signals, to pierce shields, to fire rail cannons faster than ever before. They tested drones in the asteroid belt, far from the eyes of ordinary people. Sometimes the trials failed, but they always learned, and the designs grew stronger. Humanity was not only preparing, it was evolving. Then came the day when the signals changed. The Watchers knew what it meant. The enemy was moving closer. The faint patterns grew stronger. The Dravari were coming. Now, in the present, their fleet glided silently toward Mars. Inside their ships they laughed at the thought of an unprepared Earth. They believed Mars was a simple desert world. They did not know that beneath its surface, machines waited like sleeping giants. Deep under the Martian crust, the bunkers stirred. Generators rumbled to life. Cannons shifted slightly, their long barrels adjusting to align with the stars. Drones powered up, their wings folding tight as they prepared to burst into the sky when commanded. In the orbit above, the satellites watched. They measured every movement of the alien fleet. They counted the ships, tracked their engines, studied their formations. Nothing was missed. On Earth, the command rooms grew tense. Harris stood with his staff before a wide display showing Mars and the incoming fleet. The room was silent except for the hum of machines. Everyone knew what was at stake. "Report," Harris said calmly. "Enemy fleet closing," replied an officer. "Estimated time to Mars orbit, 40 hours. Harris nodded. He turned to the staff and spoke slowly, "Everything we have built leads to this. Hold steady. Watch them closely. Do not reveal our hand too soon." In another place, Lena sat among her fellow scientists. Her hands trembled as she adjusted her console. On the screen, her drone network blinked with readiness. She whispered to herself, "Hold, just hold." The alien fleet continued forward, unaware of the eyes fixed upon them. They believed themselves unseen, yet every movement was tracked. The Watchers had become shadows of the solar system, silent guardians of Earth. The Dravari thought they were the hunters. But soon they would learn the truth. Humanity had been watching, waiting, and preparing for years. And Mars, the quiet red world, was about to awaken. The Dravari fleet moved with confidence as it entered the space between Jupiter and Mars. Their ships glowed with power, their engines leaving trails of light as they cut across the dark. To them, this was another ordinary march of conquest. They had done it many times before: arrive, strike, enslave, and move on. On the flagship Iron Spear, Commander Voron studied the glowing map in front of him. The planets of the solar system shone as small points of light. Mars appeared as nothing more than a red stone, lifeless and weak. "Scouts report no cities, no colonies, no industry," said an officer. His voice was steady, filled with certainty. "It is a dead world." Voron's eyes narrowed. "Strange. Humans are known for expansion. They spread quickly across their home planet. Why would they not reach this one?" The officer shrugged. "Perhaps they are too primitive. Perhaps they lack the will." Voron leaned back in his chair, but the thought lingered. He had seen this kind of silence before, but usually after a planet had been destroyed. Mars carried no scars, no broken cities, no remains of war. It was simply quiet. Too quiet. Still, the commander felt no fear. The Dravari were strong. Even if the humans had built defenses, they would not match the firepower of the fleet. He gave the order to continue. Across the void, the alien fleet glided closer to Mars. Their sensors scanned its surface. The images returned were plain rock, dust, valleys, and canyons. Nothing moved. Nothing lived. The Dravari laughed. One young officer smirked as he read the results. No life, no machines, no power. Only sand and stone. The crew around him shared in the laughter. To them, the invasion already felt one. They pictured themselves standing on Earth, watching humans bow. They imagined the new glory their empire would claim. But in their laughter lay the greatest mistake. The Dravari sensors were strong, but they were not prepared for what humanity had built. The bunkers were buried deep, shielded by layers of rock and dust. The rail cannons lay hidden, disguised as ridges and craters. The solar arrays reflected the light of the sun in ways that blended with the planet's natural glow. To alien eyes, Mars was a dead world. To human eyes, it was a fortress. On Earth, in the silent command rooms, the watchers saw everything. Screens glowed with the movement of each alien ship. Every time the fleet adjusted its formation, the watchers recorded it. Every time a scout ship scanned Mars, the watchers smiled. The enemy believed they saw nothing, but that blindness was the point. Commander Harris stood at the center of the control room, arms crossed. His voice was calm when he spoke. They think Mars is empty. They think we are blind. Let them. An officer looked up from his console. Sir, if they lower their guard, it may give us the chance to strike harder. Harris nodded. Exactly. The longer they believe the lie, the greater the fall when we reveal the truth. Far away, Lena sat at her own console, her eyes fixed on the drone network hidden beneath Mars. Each signal showed readiness. She had built them to act like hunters, waiting in silence until the command was given. Her chest tightened with nervous pride. Soon her machines would rise. Soon the enemy would learn the cost of underestimating Earth. On the Iron Spear, the alien commander felt the faint ripple of doubt again. He walked to the wide window of the bridge, staring at the small red world ahead. It looked harmless. But in his long years of conquest, Voron had learned one lesson: never assume. Still, his officers insisted. Mars is nothing. The true prize is Earth. We should not waste time. Voron finally raised a hand. Very well. Set course past Mars. Prepare the fleet. Earth will fall. The order spread through the fleet. Engines roared as the alien armada pushed forward, their course straight toward Mars. Their shields were relaxed, their weapons idle, their crews laughing at how easy this conquest would be. But in the silence beneath the Martian soil, machines waited. Cannons locked onto targets. Satellites adjusted their orbits, aiming their lenses. Drones folded their wings, preparing to launch. Humanity had played a careful game, hiding every strength. Now the enemy was walking straight into the heart of the trap. Back on Earth, Harris placed both hands on the table and leaned forward. His voice was steady, carrying through the room like a command carved in stone. They believe Mars is lifeless. That is their miscalculation. And it will be their end. Lena's hands trembled slightly as she pressed a button, sending a coded pulse to Mars. Across the vast distance, the hidden systems responded with a faint hum. The trap was alive. The Dravari fleet closed in, unaware of the danger around them. They saw only dust, but beneath that dust lay the fire of a united Earth. The hunters had miscalculated. They were not the ones watching. They were the ones being watched. And Mars was ready to awaken. The Dravari fleet drifted closer to Mars. Their massive ships glowed in the sunlight, their shadows falling across the red world. To them, this was only a passage. They did not slow, they did not raise shields, and they did not prepare for battle. Why would they? In their minds, Mars was lifeless rock, no more dangerous than a pebble floating in space. Inside the flagship Iron Spear, Commander Voron gave calm orders. Form up and prepare the weapons. Once we pass Mars, Earth will be in range. We will begin the attack within 2 days. His officers obeyed without question. Screens showed perfect order across the fleet. Dozens of ships moved in formation, their engines humming, their weapons resting. Confidence filled the air. But far below, in the hidden bunkers beneath Mars, the silence broke. Generators roared to life. Massive rail cannons, buried for years, began to rise slowly from the dust, their barrels stretching toward the stars. They locked onto the alien fleet with cold precision. Each cannon was the size of a building, designed to hurl solid rods of metal faster than sound, faster than any shield could block. On Earth, the command rooms were filled with quiet tension. Commander Harris stood in front of the wide display, watching as red dots the alien fleet passed into range. Green lights flashed along the Martian surface, signals showing that the hidden weapons were ready. "Sir," one officer said, The enemy is within strike distance. Harris nodded. His voice was calm but carried a weight everyone felt. Then we begin. Fire. In that moment, Mars awoke. The first rail cannon unleashed its shot. A tungsten rod tore through the void, invisible to the eye but faster than sound, faster than thought. It struck the nearest Dravari warship with such force that the ship split open instantly. Fire and metal spilled into space. The Dravari had no warning, no time to react. Then the second cannon fired. Then the third. One by one, the hidden weapons launched their deadly payloads, each shot cutting through the alien fleet with brutal accuracy. The Dravari bridge shook with alarms. "Commander! We are under attack." Voron turned sharply, his eyes glowing with shock. "From where?" "I see no ships." Another officer shouted, "The fire is coming from the planet below Mars. There are weapons there." Voron's pride faltered. "Impossible. Our scans showed nothing." But it was too late for disbelief. The fleet was in chaos. Ships tried to raise their shields, but the tungsten rods pierced through before the barriers could form. Engines exploded. Armor split apart. In moments, what had been a perfect formation became a storm of broken ships. As the rail cannons fired, swarms of drones burst from underground silos on Mars. They shot upward like arrows, their small engines glowing. Each one carried smart weapons and cutting tools, built to strike at weak points of massive ships. They swarmed into the Dravari fleet like a cloud of steel insects, overwhelming the larger vessels. On Earth, Lena watched her screen with wide eyes. Her drones had come alive, thousands of them, each following its program with perfect precision. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "Go, my hunters. Show them we are not prey." The Dravari tried to fight back. Cannons lit the void with fire, tearing apart some of the drones, but more came. Each time a ship fired, rail rounds from Mars ripped through its hull. The fleet had been caught off guard, and every second made the trap tighter. Inside the iron spear, officers shouted over one another. "Shields failing. Engine room hit. Multiple ships destroyed." Voron slammed his hand against the console. "Regroup. Regroup now. Form defenses." But even as he shouted, another Dravari ship exploded in a flash of fire, cut down by a rod fired from the Martian surface. In the command room on Earth, Harris did not smile. He only gave the next order, his voice steady. "Continue the strike. Do not let them recover." His officers obeyed, and the cannons kept firing. The sky around Mars glowed with wreckage and broken flames. The Dravari had expected an easy conquest. Instead, they found themselves bleeding before they had even reached their true target. Their pride had blinded them. Their arrogance had betrayed them. Voron's face hardened. For the first time, fear touched him. "How," he whispered to himself. "How can they fight like this? This world was supposed to be weak." But the answer was clear. Humanity had been watching. Humanity had been waiting. And now humanity had struck the first blow. The battle for the solar system had begun, and it was not the aliens who carried the advantage. It was Earth. The space around Mars was no longer silent. It burned with fire and wreckage as the hidden weapons of humanity struck again and again. The Dravari fleet, once proud and certain, was now scattered. Their ships broke apart, drifting like broken shells, their crews caught in confusion. On the Iron Spear, alarms echoed through every hall. Officers shouted as damage reports filled the screens. Voron stood at the center of the chaos, his face hard but shaken. He had led many invasions, but never had he seen such precision, such unseen power. "Raise the shields fully," he roared. "Form a defensive line. Push through their fire and regroup." But as the Dravari ships tried to form, another wave of human weapons hit. This time it was not only the rail cannons. The satellites orbiting Mars activated, their lenses glowing as they unleashed beams of light. Thin, bright lasers cut across the void, striking at engines, cutting through weapons, and leaving ships helpless. At the same moment, Lena's drones swarmed into the gaps. They moved quickly, darting between the massive vessels. Each drone carried small but deadly charges, attaching them to weak spots before pulling away. One by one, engines exploded, leaving ships spinning in silence. Lena watched from her control room on Earth, her fingers tied around her console. She whispered, "Yes, that's it. Don't give them a chance." Her team of scientists cheered as more drones found their targets, but Lena stayed focused. She knew this was only the beginning. On Earth, Commander Harris studied the map carefully. The red dots of the alien fleet were thinning as more ships fell. He gave no smile, no celebration. He only gave his order: close the net. Do not let them escape. Hidden systems across the asteroid belt responded. Small stations, disguised as mining posts, came to life. They released waves of missiles, thousands of them, each programmed to track and strike. The missiles rushed across space, curving toward the Dravari fleet like a storm. The aliens panicked. Missiles incoming. Too many to count. Intercept them. Voron shouted. Cannons on the alien ships opened fire, blasting dozens of missiles apart. But for every one destroyed, more closed in. Explosions lit the fleet as ships were torn apart. Some tried to run, but the trap was too wide. Wherever they turned, new weapons rose to meet them. Voron gritted his teeth. He slammed his fist against the console. They planned this, he muttered. They knew we were coming. The truth burned in his mind. Humanity had not been surprised. Humanity had not been caught unprepared. The humans had studied, learned, and built in silence. They had turned Mars into a shield and the solar system into a battlefield. He turned to his officers. Send the order to retreat. We must break free. But retreat was not easy. As the fleet pulled back, they found more drones waiting. As they turned away from Mars, the missile storm grew heavier. Every direction was blocked. On Earth, Harris gave his next command, his voice sharp. Cut their path. Box them in. Operators adjusted coordinates, shifting the weapons to cover the exits. The trap closed tighter. The Dravari were no longer an invading force. They were prey caught in a cage. In the control room, one officer spoke to Harris, almost in awe. "Sir, it's working. They cannot escape." Harris only nodded. "Then we hold them here. If they break through, Earth will burn. We cannot allow that." The battle raged on. The Dravari fought with desperation now. Their weapons flashed, destroying some of the drones, blasting some of the missiles. But the cost was heavy. Every strike drained their power, every moment left them weaker. Lena leaned closer to her console, eyes fixed on the feed from her drones. She felt the tension in every second. This was the moment she had prepared for, yet the reality of it made her heart race. She whispered softly, "Hold them, just hold them." And the drones obeyed. They darted faster, biting into the alien fleet again and again. Voron gripped the edge of his command table. "How can this be?" he growled. "We have crushed empires, broken worlds. Yet these humans fight as if they have always known us." No one on his bridge answered. The truth was clear even without words. The Dravari had walked into a trap carefully built over years. The humans had turned their weakness into strength. Around Mars, the wreckage grew thicker. Ships burned, missiles exploded, and the swarm of drones never stopped. The once mighty fleet was bleeding out. And in the control rooms on Earth, the watchers stood ready, their eyes sharp, their hands steady. The trap had sprung, and humanity would not let go. The Dravari had come to conquer, but instead they had been caught. And for the first time, in the cold silence of space, fear began to spread among the conquerors. The Dravari fleet had once been a symbol of power. Ships larger than mountains, weapons stronger than storms, fleets that had crushed entire civilizations. But now, before even reaching Earth, they were breaking apart. Mars had awakened, and humanity's trap was relentless. On the Iron Spear, Commander Voron stood in silence. Alarms screamed around him. Red warning lights blinked across every console. Officers shouted damage reports, but even their voices seemed distant. Every ship they had brought was falling apart. Engines were gone, shields offline, weapons destroyed. The fleet was no longer a force, it was a collection of drifting wrecks. "Commander," an officer yelled. "The forward line is gone. We have lost over half the fleet." Voron's face was stone. He had never felt so powerless. For centuries, he had led victories. For centuries, he had struck first and won. But against this hidden enemy, all his experience meant nothing. "They planned this," he muttered to himself. "Everything, all of it." Far below, the rail cannons on Mars continued to fire. Tungsten rods streaked across space, invisible but deadly. Each one found its mark, tearing through alien armor. The satellites above released more beams, targeting engines and weapon systems. Drones swarmed the weakened ships, attacking without mercy. The Dravari were trapped in a storm they could not escape. Back on Earth, Commander Harris watched the battle unfold. He remained calm, his eyes focused on the displays. The green dots representing their weapons moved with precision, striking the red dots of the alien fleet. Every shot, every strike, had been calculated. The collapse was complete and unstoppable. "Sir," an officer said, voice trembling slightly, "the enemy cannot escape. Their fleet is scattered. Most ships are drifting without power." Harris nodded slowly. "Then we finish it? Keep the pressure constant. Do not allow them to recover." Lena, in her control room, adjusted the drones' paths. The small machines darted between massive alien ships, placing charges at weak points, cutting engines and disabling weapon systems. She had spent years preparing for this. Watching it happen in real time filled her with both pride and fear. This was the moment humanity had been waiting for. In the Iron Spear, Voron tried to rally his officers. "Form a defensive circle. Protect the flagship. Push through the fire." But even as he gave orders, more ships exploded. The swarm of drones attacked in perfect coordination. Missiles launched from hidden bases in the asteroid belt struck ships that tried to flee. The fleet had no escape. Every direction they turned, more destruction waited. A young officer beside Voron looked pale. "Commander, we are losing too many. If we cannot escape, the fleet will be destroyed completely." Voron's eyes narrowed. He had always believed in strength, in power, in the ability to command. But now, he realized that even the strongest fleet could fall if the enemy knew the battlefield. Humanity had learned their patterns, studied their weaknesses, and built traps that no force could overcome. The last line of Dravari ships tried to flee, but the net had closed. Mars, the satellites, the drones, the hidden missile bases all worked together. The humans had anticipated every move. Every hope of survival was gone. Explosions lit the void like distant stars. Metal tore apart. Fire spread from ship to ship. The once mighty Dravari fleet, feared across galaxies, was reduced to fragments drifting silently through space. Voron stood alone on the bridge of the Iron Spear. He looked out at the destruction, at the emptiness where his fleet had been. For the first time in his long life of conquest, he felt fear. He realized that humanity was not a weak species to be crushed. They were clever, strong, and united. and they had made sure that any invader would never reach Earth. On Earth, the command rooms were tense but steady. Harris allowed a small nod. He knew the battle was won. The threat was neutralized. Humanity had struck first and struck perfectly. They had protected not only Earth but the entire solar system from the conquerors. Lena sat back, watching the drones return to their hidden bases. Her heart pounded, but she smiled faintly. Their mission was complete. Mars had defended itself. Humanity had defended itself. Above the red planet, the satellites glowed quietly in orbit, scanning the wreckage to ensure no threat remained. The trap had worked exactly as planned. The Dravari, confident and arrogant, had underestimated humans, and that had been their greatest mistake. Commander Voron's last transmission, weak and broken, was a warning to the rest of his empire: do not approach Earth. They are not weak. In the control room, Harris listened to the fading message. He did not feel triumph or pride. He felt the quiet satisfaction of survival. Humanity had faced a powerful enemy, and they had not only survived, they had won. The Dravari fleet was gone. Scattered pieces of metal floated silently through space. Mars, silent and red, returned to its calm. But the story of the battle would live on. Humanity had proven that even a young species could rise to meet the greatest threats. And across the stars, the message would spread. Earth was defended. Humanity was strong. Humanity could not be conquered. The void of space was silent. Where the Dravari fleet had once moved with confidence, now there was only emptiness. Twisted fragments of their ships drifted slowly, drifting like forgotten ghosts. Mars glowed faintly below, calm and quiet once more. Humanity had won. On Earth, the command rooms were busy, but the tension had eased. Commander Harris watched the screens carefully, tracking every fragment of the destroyed fleet. He knew the danger had passed, but he also knew the lesson would not be forgotten. Humanity had faced a threat larger and stronger than anything they had imagined, and they had survived. Lena sat at her console, her hands resting lightly after hours of work. The drones, exhausted from the battle, returned to their hidden bases beneath Mars, folding their wings and going silent. She felt a strange mix of relief and pride. Humanity had defended itself not with arrogance or brute force, but with strategy, patience, and intelligence. Across the galaxy, a faint transmission struggled to move through the emptiness. It came from the last surviving Dravari ship, a small scout that had managed to escape destruction by hiding behind a fragment of rock. The transmission was weak, broken, and trembling with fear. "Do not go to Earth," the Dravari voice said, garbled and fading. "Humans are not prey." The message was sent into deep space, a warning for anyone who might come after. It spread through the stars slowly, carried by every signal and relay the Dravari could reach. Other civilizations, who had once respected the Empire, now listened carefully. The legend of humanity had begun. On Earth, Harris listened to the faint transmission, though he had no need to understand every word. He already knew what it meant. The Dravari had learned the truth. Humans were not weak. Humans were not to be underestimated. And humanity had proved it before the enemy even reached Earth. In the streets of major cities, people went about their lives unaware of the danger they had narrowly escaped. Schools, offices, and markets continued, oblivious to the fact that a powerful enemy had been destroyed in space just hours earlier. The Watchers did not intervene. They allowed the world to remain peaceful, for that was part of the secret. Humans did not need to know to survive. Commander Harris and his team knew the truth, and they carried it quietly. Mars, silent and red, had become a guardian, a symbol of humanity's readiness to defend itself. The solar system was no longer just a home, it was a fortress, built by the minds, courage, and unity of people who refused to surrender. Lena left her console for a moment and gazed out of the window at the night sky. The stars were bright, calm, and beautiful. The battle had ended, but humanity had grown. They had learned that strength came not only from weapons but also from preparation, intelligence, and courage. "Commander," one officer said quietly, "the transmission from the last Dravari ship, it is spreading across nearby systems." Harris nodded. "Let it spread. Let the universe know. Humanity is not prey. Humanity is strong." Even as the warning echoed across the galaxy, the people of Earth continued to live their lives. But the universe had changed. Other civilizations, once indifferent to humanity, would now pause before approaching. Stories would spread in every corner of the stars. Earth had faced an empire and survived. Earth had struck first and struck perfectly. In quiet control rooms and labs, the watchers allowed themselves a small moment of satisfaction. Their strategy had worked. Their patience had paid off. Humanity had used its greatest weapon, knowledge. The last Dravari scout drifted on, powerless and alone. Its weak signal carried the message of fear and respect. Whoever received it would understand, humans were not to be conquered. They were not simple. They were clever, united, and willing to fight with every tool they had. And back on Earth, the sun rose as usual. Children ran in parks, workers went to their offices, and scientists prepared for another day of research. Mars remained in its quiet orbit, a guardian and a reminder of what humanity could achieve. Harris turned to Lena, and they shared a look. No words were necessary. The fleet had been destroyed, the solar system defended, and a message had been sent that would echo for generations. Humanity had faced the greatest threat it had ever known and had not only survived, it had proven itself. Across the stars, civilizations would remember this moment. And Earth, once a small and young planet in a vast galaxy, had become a symbol of strength, intelligence, and courage. Humanity had shown that even a young species could rise to meet the greatest dangers. The Dravari would never forget, and the universe would never underestimate humans again. Mars was quiet now, but it had spoken a clear message: humanity would defend itself, and it would never be conquered.